Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here, and before we get started with my good friend Chris Duane, I just want to mention the McIlvaney Weekly Commentary. Our good friends at McIlvaney, and of course I just interviewed David McIlvaney not long ago, and he's a very like-minded friend. You'll recall he said this about precious metals.
Why do I own gold and silver? In worst case scenario, I have the means for taking care of my family for years and years and years and years to come.
Well, the folks at McIlvaney are stepping up to help support SGT Report, and I would just like to ask you to visit their site, weeklycommentary.com, and sign up for their free podcast that is hosted by David himself. So visit weeklycommentary.com and sign up today. Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning in. It is a thrill to have you back. It is May 31st, the day before June. My birthday's in June, so is my son's birthday. We happen to share the same birthday, and that's a pretty exciting coincidence that God gave us.
Yeah, my wife and son are both born in June also, so.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah, well, I must be attracted to Geminis or whatever it is.
Yeah, so. Well, guys, there's my friend Chris Duane back on the line. We've been friends for many, many years, and Chris, we haven't talked in a very long time, probably more than a year, but, you know, as it is true with old friends, you just fall right back into a cadence like you just saw each other yesterday. We were talking here before the call officially started, and 10-15 minutes in, I'm like, man, we should have been recording this. How are you, Chris?
Very good. Yeah, it's once you find people you really resonate with on a deeper level, you can pick up with them 10, 20 years later, and it'll be as if nothing had passed. So I feel like both of us are extremely passionate about the truth. You can see in our videos and the amount of work that the two of us have done over the past, I don't know, 5 or 6 years of putting it in on YouTube. We're all about being, finding the truth and getting to it and more importantly, breaking it down for people to see it. Because I think you and I believe, if everybody knew what we knew, this system wouldn't exist anymore. And that's the sad thing, is that the only way that the system continues to perpetuate itself is there's too many people who keep their head in the sand and try not to, think disturbing thoughts out there. I mean, you just touched on a subject I don't even like going into, but, there's grander subjects, just not even controversial. Like, our money is debt. All that debt is owned to privately owned banks that are owned by wealthy trillionaires that own and control governments and media. I mean, like, that's not even a question, and it affects every aspect of our life. It is the religion of this age. And yet it's a disturbing fact, because most people are in debt and have no clue of getting out of it. Right. That we have false flags that cause wars. This is not a debatable, controversial topic. This is how nations, run empires. And yet it's something that, those two subjects, I think, are just the opening gateway to a whole rabbit hole of uncomfortable truths out there. And and I think Sean and I have tried over the years to break down so many subjects into digestible form that's on YouTube that is gaining traction. I mean, you and I are both plus 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and growing every day, and it's a good thing.
Well, yeah, people are waking up, and you mentioned that topic we were talking about prior to recording. I'd mentioned Pizzagate and Petagate. We talked briefly about that. It's just so deeply disturbing, because you and I both know that the enemies aligned against humanity have a penchant for this sort of godlessness, right?
Yeah.
At the very tippy top, according to Ronald Bernard, the Dutch banking whistleblower, they're Luciferians. So that should come as no surprise to our listeners, and I don't think it does. But I want to ask you this about the pathology of the left. When you talk about the godless among us, the people on the left, that Patriot Nurse had done a video recently on YouTube saying these people, the libtards, as she describes them, in California, the people running California into the ground, the people in Sacramento, are your enemy. We just have to call a spade at this point, because they are your enemy. They are aligned against everything that's good, and they're going to tear this country to the ground. And I think there's no better example of that liberal pathology than Kathy Griffin's recent stunt here, holding what looks like a headless Donald Trump. I mean, how do you even explain that, Chris? If you or I did that as a joke when Obama was president, we would have been drummed out of this country or probably shot.
Yeah, I mean, just that subject alone's got multiple different angles. Number one, Kathy Griffin's just an attention whore. I mean, she admits it herself. I mean, she's really... she's not a funny comedian. She, gets close to people and then, tells their dirty secrets and makes comedy shows out of it. And, she's not somebody to take seriously. I think she even realized that she went too far with this skit. But you know what? At the end of the day, she's eaten up the news for the next 48 hours, and then the sick people on the left, even though she apologized for it, that's how they really feel. They really feel like they do want to cut off Trump's head because it's not Hillary. But the whole idea, this Patriot nurse calling people the enemy, that's where I think we get into another touchy subject that maybe you and I don't see eye to eye on. I don't necessarily see any of these people, except for those at the very top who are consciously doing this, as being the enemy. I think the grand majority of humanity is just unconscious to the whole reality, and are ignorant. I want to almost say childlike. Even her stunt that she did, that's something you kind of expect from a third grader. Like, my son did something, wrote a picture or did something like that at school. I would kind of say, okay, like, time out. That's just not appropriate adult behavior. But when I look at, on the left and the right, all last year I kind of rode out and stayed away from this whole Trump thing because I saw how, even on the right, there's just a lot of people out there who are unconsciously upset at, Obama and the left and all that other stuff, and don't realize the same evil comes from the right. You can be against socialism, but are you against fascism? That's the other aspect of that.
Yeah, and are you against Zionism? Which, when we talk about
which overrides both of those.
Well, that's right. When we talk about the bankers, right, and the Zionists have literally hijacked Israel, and they're using the Jewish religion to their own ends. And I guess my point here on what Patriot Nurse said is that, and I agree with you, except for that these people at the top can easily redirect non-thinkers, people that are fallow, and they can turn them into our enemies. Because literally, if you don't believe in something, you can fall for anything. And I think that's what we're seeing on the left. The people on the left and some on the right, I'm not casting aspersions. I'm not saying that people on the right are fantastic, because I've broken my false right-left paradigm, as you know, but I'm just saying that so many on the left are godless, they worship at the altar of abortion, and they are on a slippery slope into the abyss, and by virtue of that, they really are turning into the enemies of humanity, and they're being used by the puppet masters to that end. Look at the Soros-induced violence, right? The Soros-induced,
I just watching any of these young, communist kids throwing rocks in Seattle and stuff like that. They're the drug use, the zombie eyes, like, I'm not saying, hey, listen, I'm going to go, adopt one of these kids and take them under my arms, but my point is that, yes, the Zionists, I believe, own and control both sides of the paradigms. Lenin himself, said, the best way to control the best way to stop the opposition is to control it themselves. So all these guys that come to the forefront, and you and I probably would disagreed all last year about Trump if we had been talking. But I just kept saying, this guy is not a constitutionalist, Ron Paul, come save this country kind of guy. He's got Zionists all over him. He got all these Goldman Sachs banksters. He got $3 billion worth of free media from the Zionist media that totally ignored, Ron Paul. And sucked all the air out of the Republican primaries, and I believe that he's been put there to blow up the nationalistic, tendencies that he does have, and to usher in a global new world order. Which,
let me say one thing, though. Let me say one thing.
1988.
Right.
2018, man.
That's right. Right around the corner, the Rothschild Economist magazine in 1988, with the phoenix rising from the burning pile of fiat, with the gold medallion around its neck, says 2018. Now. Yeah. The Rothschilds, I think we would be definitely naive if we said they have really lost any of their power. So maybe they're still on the right track with their New World Order agenda and burning down all the fiat currencies in 2018, when gold and silver would then rise stratospherically. So we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
I was just going to say one glimmer of hope just recently with Trump is he was at this G7, and of course he was being put under all this pressure to support the Paris Accord, right, in this whole climate change agenda.
Which is totally Rothschild.
Yep, it is.
And 100%.
And if they are going to, as Bill Gates says, innovate to zero emissions by 2050, if they don't give us new forms of technology, new forms of energy, we're going to live as serfs. And I think that is their goal. That's the Agenda 2030 goal. And my point about Trump there is that however he did it, and because it would be scary being surrounded by those people, those New World Order forces, saying you need to support the Paris Accord because it's great for the planet. He came back not in support of the Paris Accord. So there's still no agreement there. It's just a glimmer of hope, because I'm just telling you, man, if they jam Agenda 2030 down our throats, we're doomed.
Yeah, but Sean, that's the thing. Like inside this paradigm, everything is planned, or has alternate plans or backup plans. And if it doesn't work, they just kill these people. So the fact that maybe he didn't sign it, well, maybe they're going to dump, like I said, dump the economy. The 4 generations of United States debt that has been built up all over this time, this Ponzi scheme, Social Security net, the deindustrialization of the United States, dump it all on Donald Trump and his nationalistic things, and say, by the way, he also said no to this Paris Accord. And maybe they use, the Paris Accord too, and the destruction of all these currencies to usher in the world order. Maybe it is going to be a carbon-based, Ponzi scheme that they're going to do like Al Gore wants. I don't know. All I know is that there is nobody coming to save us. Nobody ever. Like Ron Paul maybe coulda, and I met the guy, and I really didn't get a good vibe from him. And I don't know if he was just nervous being in Washington, D.C., but nobody's coming to save us, Sean. And I think like anytime we look for a hero outside of ourselves, it does us injustice. And I think that's why, the majority of my work has really been on having the individual being aware and prepared and realizing nobody's coming to get you and no one's coming to save you. It's really up to us at the end of the day. And you can get wrapped around the evils of this world, of other things outside of your control. And you can, get caught into the hope loop of hoping somebody's going to come logically and say, hey, we can't spend more than what we have and enslave our children with all this debt and think that things are going to turn out okay. It doesn't end well. And instead of getting into this hopeless mire of hoping and working for some collectivist solution, I'm all about the conscious individual saying, hey, the world's fucked up, but my world doesn't have to.
No, I know.
On the skills that I got, my wealth that I got, my friends that I got, I'm going to keep a tight circle on that.
Yeah, but you know that when Trump was running, my whole point was the ship was going to go down just that much faster with Hillary, because her whole plan was to get in and cover up her crime. No, well, her plan was to get in and cover up her crimes in perpetuity, because she has a license to kill, and as long as she was in the White House, she'd maintain that license to kill, and she'd have all the power to cover up her crimes. So at least I think there's a glimmer of hope for humanity that she and Podesta and the DNC are being called out, being called to the carpet for what appears to be their involvement in the assassination, the political assassination of Seth Rich. Yeah. And that's a very big deal, because when the dominoes on this corruption begin to fall, if they're allowed to fall, and that's a big if, I don't know if they will be allowed to fall, there'd be nothing better for we the people than to see hardcore criminals like her, like Podesta, like Donna Brazil, like Debbie Wasserman Schultz, brought before a real jury and tried for their crimes. Because as you know, Chris, there is no justice in this nation for we the little people.
No. Yeah, I mean, two silver strikes that I did last year, and again, I didn't speak out, half as much as I used to do. I did lesser evil. The lesser of two evils is still evil, and I had like a double-headed hydra of Hillary and Trump. And then the other one I did was called Justice or Just Us, and it was, Hillary, ugly mug surrounded by a mob, looking to hang her, lynch her, shoot her, put her on tape or whatever. And the reality is, if you and I did anything in Hillary's 30 years of criminal behavior, we'd be in jail instantly, throw out the key, and never speak to us again. She somehow, floats above it like she doesn't even care. So yes, I agree. Trump is lesser evil than Hillary, but I don't think that by any means he's a savior. I think he's an absolute Zionist. He has got Jared Kushner whispering in his ear. Jared Kushner's father is a convicted felon, billionaire Zionist. You would have gotten the exact same thing with Hillary, because Chelsea's married to another Zionist whose father is, oh, by the way, a convicted felon, billionaire Jewish Zionist. They own and control the system. You got 5 Goldman Sachs guys, 1 Rothschild agent, Wilbur Ross, all ready to divide up the spoils of America once they burn this thing to the ground, just like they did with Russia. I think the collapse of the Soviet Union is probably the most important subject matter that I think anybody looking at the collapse of this paradigm should know. Understand that the Rothschild Zionists were the ones that pulled the plug on the communists, and they were the first ones there with all the new fresh printed Deutschmarks and dollars to buy up all these state assets for pennies on the dollar, created all these 20 to 30-year-old billionaire Zionist oligarchs that totally ran Russia, and it wasn't until Putin came forward under the guise of these oligarchs was there any relief from the Zionist rape of Russia?
Well, I want to jump in and say that the Rothschilds had a hand in the original introduction of communism into Russia when they toppled the Tsar, and with their Bolshevik Revolution. And so how many millions and millions, how many tens of millions, how many hundreds of millions of people are the Rothschild family literally responsible for the deaths of? We are talking hundreds of millions, probably at this point over 1 billion people on planet Earth have been extinguished because of the Rothschild plans behind the scenes for centuries, Chris.
Yeah, and that's why all the work that I do, we live in a debt and death paradigm. The Rothschilds give debt to those that they rule and death to anybody that opposes them. So if you wonder why, there's nations like Iraq and Libya and Iran in the crosshairs, or Syria or North Korea, it's because they don't have Rothschild banks running those nations. For better or worse, I'm not in support of any of those regimes, but for better or the worse, they're not part of that debt and death paradigm. And that's why there's this constant war drum. And given Trump's latest trip to Saudi Arabia, the tyrannical, absolute disgusting regime that's there, kissing the hand of that regime, then flying off to Tel Aviv to go kiss the Zionist hand, and then, for window dressing, go to see the Vatican, and all the war drumming that Trump's already starting for Iran. Knowing that just prior to Bush leaving office, Dick Cheney, with Seymour Hersh, the Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter, reporting that just months before Bush got out of office, Dick Cheney was planning for a false flag attack against the United States Navy and blaming it on Iran. They want Iran dead, and that's the part of the Greater Israel Project. And if whatever two things must happen, this financial paradigm must collapse. They could blame that on Trump, and they want to go after Iran. So, I did a video called Three Coming False Flags, in 2012, talking about how they need to cover up the collapse of this unsustainable debt-based paradigm and push the blame onto anybody else but the Rothschild Zionist central banking system that created it. And I could see them either blaming it on Iran or China or Russia or whatever. And going off to a war, and that they could use a false flag against any of those nations to have a military excuse to dominate those resources that are vital to this paradigm. And then the third final false flag is to shut down the truth movement. And what we're seeing with this adpocalypse, I could see a lot of the truth movement just suddenly losing a lot of the incentive and motivation to go out and continue to speak truth. And all of this is going to come to an end at some point. And, at the end of the day, you can get wrapped around the wheel about all these bad things, or just keep focusing on what you can do in the meantime.
Yeah, this fake news meme is nothing but a straw man, and everybody knows it because these advertisers are not afraid of offensive content on broadcast TV. They're more than happy to broadcast their commercials on shows like Fox's Lucifer, as I've mentioned numerous times. There's other examples as well. It's a complete straw man to try to destroy the truth media. And I think you're right about the Rothschilds and the Zionists. They probably will get away with the collapse, and they'll get away with shifting the blame because the media, the Mockingbird mainstream horror media, is in their back pocket. They own it. Yeah. And even though CNN has no credibility left as a news network. I mean, literally zero. The only people watching it are geriatric people that, call their doctor to ask about Humira, as directed by CNN's commercials there. And it's just an absolute joke. So the truth media is rising. One great example, say what you want about Mark Dice. I think he does a really good job. His videos are entertaining. He's usually right over the target. And he commented on this Kathy Griffin thing, and he called out Jake Tapper on Twitter. And because Dice now has such a huge platform, Jake Tapper had to respond to Mark Dice. And he said, I disavowed her on the air. We had disavowed this. And Mark's like, well, you haven't done it on Twitter yet. So you're talking about the new media now having more power and a larger platform, really, in social media, in actual viewers and actual reach and actual numbers than the horror mainstream Mockingbird media, as exemplified by people like Jake Tapper. By the way, whose wife, Jennifer, did tell the Washingtonian a year before anybody had heard of Pizzagate that their favorite family restaurant was Comet Ping Pong. Very strange. Very strange.
No, I'm definitely happy with the rise of the alt media. I don't think that people like Alex Jones represented. I think he's totally bought and paid for. I have no faith in him. Jury's still out on Dice. I marked Dice. I don't even know that's a real name. But, it's good to have people out there and having a platform to do that, which is why, having more than 5 or 6 years, on YouTube, you and I are building, a pretty good track record that, to call out bullshit when we see it. And I think over time, the more that these things come true and the more that people wake up, in time, people like you and I and so many others in the truth media are going to have a much larger platform and a much larger say. And it will, come at a time when people start asking questions. I think the great openings were, to consciously being aware was right after 9/11, and social media really wasn't around. 2008, even YouTube was kind of small back then. I look at, where Alex Jones was in 2008. I mean, he only had like a few, tens of thousands of followers, not the millions that he has now. And I think that the next financial crisis, military crisis, whatever major event that's going to shock this generation, I think that we now have a lot of people who invested a lot of time and delving into a lot of these issues, who will be there to give a voice to the contrary to what the mainstream media says. And I think the mainstream media, even itself, I mean, Sean, these people, they can, they can believe so much, but at some point their paycheck doesn't cover their cognitive dissonance, that they can't continue to do what they do knowing what they know. And that's the beautiful part about this, is that even the people who are really oppose us, who benefit off this system, at some point their consciousness is going to take over and say, I'm not falling for this. I didn't sign up for this. The last time that they were banging the war drums for Syria, there was a lot of people in the military says, not my war. I'm not going over there to do that. And kind of put an end to the Obamacare effort over there. So I'm a firm believer that the battle for all of this is not a financial, a political, military, or spiritual battle. It's a battle of consciousness, and it goes to individuals. And to call people enemies makes them off to one side and view you as the enemy, instead of always looking for the middle ground. The solution's always the middle. It's never one side or the other. It's the integration of both sides and saying, hey, I get, like taking the fascist and the socialist aspect of it. I get you want to take care of people, socialists. Fascists, I get that we need profit motivation and industry to do this, okay? But can we have conscious capitalism and say, hey, does it all have to be where all the wealth goes to the top, that the CEOs are making 400 times what the average person does, that they're not investing in the betterment of people and building freaking space stations and spaceships and wasting billions of dollars, throwing it up into space? Or can we have these billionaires invest in, organic farming to feed poor kids that have no access to fresh fruits and vegetables, or, something along those lines? It's the integration of the two. It's not the, one side's bad, the other side's evil.
Well, but you know what? And you and I agree about so much. It's like asking a tiger to change its stripes, what you've just described. Because, again, getting back to Ronald Bernard saying that at the top of the pyramid, these people are Luciferians. He says they hate humanity. You can't get those people. They hate us.
I'm not trying to get the Zionists. I'm trying to get
No. But I'm saying Luciferians. You said it's not. You said it's a war for consciousness and not a spiritual battle. I think it's very much a spiritual battle, and we can't ask those people to come to our side or meet us in the middle. They're not willing to. They hate humanity because of what they serve. They serve darkness.
Yeah, the baby eating, abortionists, you're not going to get that. And I told you, I'm not going to do that. But look at me. Look at Ken O'Keefe. I mean, look at, a lot of these other guys that, come 2003, man, I wanted to go murder Muslims. Like, I was so rock hard, neocon, Republican, Marine, right after 9/11, I was in New Jersey when this happened. Like, I wanted to just go nuke every single country in the Middle East, until I started to see, like, oh, wait a minute. But what's this Building 7 thing? What is this cheering, Israelis? What have I signed up for unknowingly and risked my life and believed and wanted to go kill somebody else in that belief? And it's, to me, like, I'm an example of waking people up and saying, hey, here's a couple things that you maybe want to look into before you start thinking in absolute terms and thinking somebody's, bad or evil. Because me in 2003, a billion Muslims, enemy, like every single one of them. And now it's like, God, well, shit, what would happen if I was an Iranian in 1953 and the British and the Americans came in and overthrew Mossadegh, a democratically elected moderate Muslim, and they overthrow him, and then all of a sudden we got all these, ridiculous people. If I was Iranian, maybe they stop leaving us alone. You look at all these other countries that we've dramatically affected. I mean, the British destroyed the Chinese economies, the Indian economies with 2 opium wars. I mean, we spread so much debt and death all over the world, and we need to understand that maybe we need to stop doing a lot less of that and start thinking a lot more.
Yeah, but okay, but let's just flush this out real quick here at
Go
the
ahead.
end, and then we'll move on to silver and gold and cryptos. We discover that the Rothschilds are at the root of so much of this evil. The Queen, of England and the Windsors, et cetera, the Vatican, throw them in there. So when you identify the Rothschilds,
Yeah.
let me ask you this as it pertains to the Rothschilds. Who is it that you think they worship? Do they worship the God of the Bible, or are they headed in a different direction? Because
honestly,
my studies
here's my
indicate that
take
they
on the
worship
Zionists.
Lucifer, and that's why I tell you that even at the top of the pyramid, these enemies of humanity, this is a spiritual battle. That's why I say wholeheartedly that these people literally are our enemies. I'll stick to that. I'm not going to meet them in the middle. I can't.
No. I'm not asking to go have a powwow fest with Jacob Rothschild. No, and I think most people don't realize that the Star of David, the symbol of Israel, is viewed by traditional Jews as satanic. The hexagram that has is really the seal of Solomon, and if you know anything about the Bible, it's the transmutation of wealth. And King Solomon was an evil, crazy dude, but he was one of the richest men in the world. And that's what the Rothschilds did. They took that seal of Solomon and have created a paradigm built off of debt and death. Do they worship the devil? I wouldn't surprise me, but I think at the end of the day, in order for them to live with themselves in their day-to-day operations, I think they think that what they're doing is just good business. Just worry about us. It helps benefit our family. Listening to Aaron Russo talking to Nicholas Rockefeller, that's the kind of things that they think, of. They say, what do you care about them? Just worry about your family. Do what's good for you, and be damned, humanity. I think that they're, egoists. They're psychopaths. They have no empathy. They value, they don't value themselves, and they don't value humanity. So, I'm not trying to convince you to say, hey, the Rothschilds can be redeemed. What I'm trying to say is that the people that we talk to on a daily basis, whether they're on the left or the right, are usually unconscious to the things that you and I both know very well of. And I think that if everybody knew what we knew, there would be a tremendous middle ground that could not be swayed by this media, the banks, and that. And that's what I'm working towards, a conscious awakening of humanity that disempowers them, because these Zionists or Catholics or whatever group that you think is running the world out there, they're powerless without the people unconsciously supporting them on a daily basis. If you withdraw your power, take your money out of the banking system, stop buying their stuff, stop watching their garbage, they lose money and profits. And you know what? Guess what? They don't have so much control over you anymore. And that's what I think is a valuable effort in what we're doing.
No, I think you're right. Humanity has a lot of power, and their job. The people at the top of the pyramid know how much power humanity has, and so what they do, and their playbook is divide and conquer, and they're very, very good at it. They divide us, and then they conquer us, because when we're all in these disparate, separated groups, when we feel separated, when we're fighting about all of these different issues, we're easily conquerable. Let's just talk about precious metals and cryptos briefly here at the end, because I think that I can speak for just about everybody in the silver and gold camp, specifically silver at this point, that we all feel just very exasperated, and it just feels like every time we think that there's some light at the end of the tunnel, like the news with the the LBMA and the new silver fix, the electronic silver fix falling apart with CME Group and Thomson Reuters,
or Deutsche Bank admitting that they were part of this rigging
system. The whole system of this fixing should have fallen by now. And here we sit with silver at 17.
Yeah, and that the corruption in the gold and silver markets was worse than the $5 trillion LIBOR scandal. Yeah, no, I get it, Sean. I get why people are pissed off and kind of low on silver. I don't look at it that way anymore. I am like, thank God silver is as cheap as it is today, because there will never be another opportunity in humanity to grab as much silver on a historic basis than you can get now. So I view my wealth in ounces. I don't look at digits on the screen anymore. I don't care what the spot price of silver is. I stack silver because I know that this. I did this video with. Have you seen that demonocracy graphic of Exeter's pyramid?
Yes.
I mean, it is like Michael Bay, should make a movie, and it's scarier than anything that Transformers could do. I mean, to see that pyramid floating over, what was the Twin Towers, and the amount of money and debt that is goes off into the horizon and stuff. I mean, this is a global, generational, debt-based fiat Ponzi scheme that can't go on forever, Sean. I mean, we're at the nexus of just even what Jacob Rothschild said. We're at the point of the most important monetary experiment of all time. Like, that's scary when somebody says that this is an experiment to them. Like, how far can we push this? How far can we push this illusionary debt-based Ponzi scheme and suck up all the wealth of the world into this and get people to buy into it and thinking that digits in their bank accounts some wealth? It's not. It's a future claim on wealth. It is not. Like, you got $100. In itself, it's worth nothing. You got a Bitcoin that's worth $2,000. In itself, it's worth nothing until you exchange it for something real and useful and tangible. They're future claims on wealth, and that's what they're pushing, these digital illusions of wealth. So I don't get upset about the price of silver anymore. And I did, in 2013 when it was getting smacked down mercilessly, and then I'm like, wait a minute. I hated stacking silver when it was 30. Like, I would send in, X amount of dollars and get half the amount of silver back. Now it's low. This is what I'm kind of used to. Send in a lot of money and you get a good amount of ounces back. And I know the historical value of silver is 1/10 of an ounce of silver for a hard day's worth of human labor that goes back to the Bible, that goes into the art of war. And even 2/3 of the world today, Sean, lives off of $2 a day. I mean, think about that. 2/3, billions of people only make the equivalent of 1/10 of an ounce of silver. And to hear Americans whining and bitching about the price of silver being too cheap, I want to say, like, I don't want to say the nasty words, but like, think about how freaking fortunate you are on a historical basis to be able to buy that, and forego a pizza.
You're right. But I think what is difficult for many of us, it's a bitter pill to swallow, and it's salt in an open wound, is this tremendous rise in the cryptos. And I know that you've been anti-Bitcoin from day one. I was too.
Pardon? I think I'm the only one left.
Yeah, you might be, because here's the thing. I just recently, a year ago, probably, maybe just slightly more than a year ago, said after that last Bitcoin correction off the all-time high back down to the 200-300 range, I said, people may just want to dip a toe in the pool just to have some skin in the game, whether you hate Bitcoin or not, because someday it'll probably go to all.
See, here's the dirty little
but let me
secret,
just finish.
Sean.
It could go to all new-time highs. Let me finish, please. Let me finish,
Bitcoin.
because I know how much you hate the cryptos. I want to ask you if you've expanded your thoughts on any of the cryptos, because now we're not just talking about Bitcoin. We're talking about Ethereum and Litecoin and all of these others. And what I'm afraid of, Chris, is this. I'm afraid that the powers that be are going to funnel a lot of this inflationary money into these cryptos, and they may go far, 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 far higher, and it may somehow still prevent silver and gold from doing what they should be doing. Because what silver should be doing right now is what we saw Ethereum do. It should go from 7 to 20 to 200. Sorry, your turn.
I have a hard time, like, not talking over people. I know it's probably my worst thing to do. So it's because I've already thought about these things. I kind of know where your questions go, and I get that. At the end of the day, all these things are digital illusions of wealth. They're not the solution to more digital illusions of wealth. They're not real tangible wealth. I don't find it quite ironic that the time that silver and gold were rocketing up, that's when all of a sudden this came onto the market. I don't know, it was 2011, 2012, when I started getting courted by Bitcoin developers, Bitcoin proponents, Bitcoin this, but like my mailbox, I forget whatever day it was, but then I had 5 emails from people. And it's because I was so outspoken against silver, so outspoken against the banking system. You would think it would be a natural fit for me, to get onto this crypto bandwagon. But at the end of the day, I have to be intellectually honest. It's not the solution. It's a distraction. It's a digital illusion of wealth. Do I agree with you? Yes, that silver should be $200, $900 an ounce. Yeah, it should be, but it's not. And that says to me that it's the most undervalued thing. And the dirty little secret with all you crypto guys right now is that you're all silver stackers at heart. You guys know damn well you're gambling on digital illusions of wealth, and you got an itchy trigger finger at some point to cash out You're gambling money, because it's what skin in the game is. You're gambling money out and get it into the real physical silver. So
Well,
I
wait,
say,
now let me.
well, let all these cryptos run up, because at some point, that money is going to flow into gold and silver. And with it sitting at $17, and I don't know what Bitcoin goes. It's so volatile, I can't even keep up. But all that money is going to end up flowing down Exeter's pyramid, that demonocracy graphic, into gold. And I believe silver is going to be the only thing left standing at the end of the day. All these cryptos out there, they're nothing, Sean. You can have 900.
Well, but that's not
Ponzi
true.
schemes.
But see, here's
They're
the
all
problem.
Ponzi schemes.
But here's the problem with intellectual honesty here, and I'm not accusing you of being anything less than intellectually honest. I'm just saying, from my perspective, having looked at these cryptos, they have intellectual value. They're intellectual property. The blockchain with Ethereum is an amazing story. So let me just hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. And as it pertains to Bitcoin, I hear exactly what you're saying. The problem is we have to take a look at the new evidence that comes in that may help us develop a different opinion on where these are ultimately going. Because when we see the Japanese government say, we now recognize Bitcoin as a currency, that is a sea change. And it's a governmental sea change. And it doesn't mean that suddenly what you're saying is false. It just means that now the data is changing, that I think gives more merit to these things sucking in fiat and going to the moon. And it really, really is something we should address, because people are talking about $10,000 million Bitcoin. That sounds ridiculous, but it literally could happen. Look what these banks are doing. Look at all of the fiat in the world. Where does it need to go? Where is it going to go? The stock market?
All right. Two things I'm going to ask you. You're into, we mentioned earlier before this, Phoenix currency, the Rothschilds, the Bible mentions the mark of the beast. What do you think the bankers would most want to have as the next global reserve currency? A crypto digital illusion of wealth that they can create out of nowhere, tax, trace, and cut off people? Or would they want gold and silver?
Well, I've already made that thesis. I've already said that it's very possible that the original idea of these cryptos and Bitcoin, it may have been an intelligence operation. It may be a banker operation. And people can flesh that out and talk about that. But now we see, because of the success of Bitcoin, we see in the marketplace, in the free and open marketplace, the development of all of these other blockchain technologies and these cryptos, which are not necessarily related to intelligence agencies. And I'm not saying Bitcoin is. I'm saying it could be. But I think that you're right. It could be a brainwashing operation to get people to accept digital currency. I've said that from the start. I 100% agree. I don't know that it's mark of the beast until you take that chip in your forehead or in your wrist, but I definitely think it's a slippery slope. We see what they're doing to India. They're taking away all the cash.
I know. And here we have the truth media laying down for this and not questioning it, only because...
Well, first of all, all I do is question things. I'm not laying down. I'm having a conversation with you about it, because I can see the data changing. I'm afraid for those of us who only hold gold and silver and don't have... Put 1% of your assets in a crypto and see if you get lucky, because that may be where it's at. I don't know, man. I don't know when we are ever going to see silver and gold do what they should do. So silver specifically.
I think we already agree that a cryptocurrency is the bankster's wet dream from biblical times. I mean, whatever mark of the beast, it has to be some sort of crypto, digital, whatever it is. So the idea is, to me, evil, because it doesn't represent fair and honest weights and measures. It's not based off of that. Then people go, hey, Chris, you're against Bitcoin. What do you possibly have against this blockchain? The value of the blockchain. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Bitcoin and blockchain are not synonymous. They're two separate things. Blockchain as a technology, I think, is wonderful. I'm all pro blockchain, just as I am pro email versus regular mail, say. I think blockchain should be as free and as useful and as widespread as use as email, because at the end of the day, that's all it is just transferring data from one thing to another. It's a smart contract. I'm not opposed to blockchain, so long as that there is something tangible that it represents, that it's a receipt for something, say an ounce of silver or gold. I know that they just came up with a Sharia-compliant crypto gold-backed currency. All for it. There's what are those guys? Gold money. If they have a cryptocurrency that's backed by gold, all for it. If there's a silver one, I'm all for that. What I don't like is the idea that you take something that has no value, build up the perceived value, and then sell it for real value. And then Bitcoin itself, Sean, it can only handle 7 transactions per second, actually 5 transactions per second. Visa handles 64,000 transactions per second. It's technically not even built to be used on a grand scale.
Well, I know Bitcoin is it's got its issues now because the blockchain. Yeah,
it's all,
but that's because it's had so much damn success. That's really the problem, is that it's been so widely embraced internationally that it's got issues now, and that's why Ethereum and Litecoin and some of these others are even doing better.
Like it'll become unusable. What good is having Bitcoin go to $1 million if you can't transact it?
Well, the good of it is that if you have one, then you could cash out that $1 million and buy one hell of a lot of silver.
Yeah. Well, that's my point. That's the dirty little secret. If you're going to make a video title, the dirty little secret of Bitcoin is you guys are all silver stackers. You guys can all go play with your, dirty little girlfriend, but at the end of the day, you're going to marry silver.
Your dirty little girlfriend. Oh, I don't know, man. I just really, my heart goes out to everybody who has just been literally abused and absolutely abused by the bankers, those of us who have held silver. And I know that you say, well, one thing I will say that you're 100% right on, is 100% true, is that I bet right now silver is cheaper in dollars, given all that have been printed, than it has ever been, maybe. Yeah. I know that back, in the early part of this decade, when it was trading around, what, 3.5, 5?
At 7.
Yeah,
I looked at
it's cheaper now at 17, given the trillions that they've printed.
Yep.
It's really cheaper now. The problem is that most people in this country, their wages, their salaries are not keeping up with that inflation. I mean, the people, I bet a lot of people in this country that were making $40,000 in 2002 are probably only making $55,000 now if they're lucky. And, so they don't have any more money to spend on silver than they did then. And they ought to. Silver should seem dirt cheap. Silver at 17 should feel like it's $3 based on the money in your bank account. But most people don't have that money because, our wages are not keeping pace with inflation.
Well, and here's the other thing, that Demonocracy infographic, every other asset out there. I mean, the people are barely scraping by. And trust me, half of the United States can't even come up with $200 in an emergency. So trust me, I get that there's a lot of people out there who just cannot buy that. But, even I have members in my group who I have one kid I'll never forget. He's a pizza delivery guy. He's got 3 kids, married, and a dog, and he does pizza delivery on the side on the weekend to make extra money. And he puts all that extra money into buying silver dimes that he buys on a weekly basis. And when he told me the amount of stack that he had after 3 years of just doing pizza delivery on the side, I told him, I said, if you think about the historical wealth of owning that amount of silver, there's probably only maybe a few thousand people who've ever owned as much physical silver as he has. So silver is cheap. Asset prices. I sold my house in 2005 at the top of New Jersey's housing bubble, and cashed out at the top of that bubble and rented for the next 3 years. People need to start looking at the value of every other asset that they do own. Even to the point where, if you got stuff laying around your garage, why wouldn't you sell that and go get some silver right now? Why wouldn't you go sell an extra property, that Apple stock, that cryptocurrency, that all these other things that are seemingly going up tremendously in value, and not get into something undervalued? And to me, I just think silver is just, it's going to be amazing when it does happen. And it's the ultimate insurance program. It's the ultimate way, I believe, of transferring wealth from one generation to the other. It's conscious. It's a wonderful thing. I will always speak highly of it.
All right. Well, again, you and I have been friends for a very long time. So, guys, I know this has been a dynamic conversation. Do not ever misinterpret our emotional excitedness about these topics as being anything less than friendly, because I love Chris. I just, this whole crypto thing has me spinning, because anybody who had bought Ethereum at 7, with as much stackage as we all had, at 200, I mean, you literally, you throw 70,000 at that thing and you're a multimillionaire here 6 months later. So, it just burns me up that we're just all we're victims of these bankers, man. We get it coming and going. They tax us when we make our money. They tax us when we buy our gasoline. They tax us with property taxes on our homes. We're literally slaves to this system. We do the right thing by buying physical silver and some physical gold. And what do we get? Not very damn much in return.
So you missed out on Ethereum. You missed out on Bitcoin.
No, I didn't miss out on Ethereum. I bought a bunch at 20. I'm just saying that I wish I told everybody to buy a whole bunch at 7.
Okay. Even if you did that, and that's like the reason why you want to get into it, right? Like only because of the value of it, not because of what it is or what it does.
Well, that's
or how
not true in the
useful it
case
is
of
or
Ethereum.
wonderful
As
it
I
is.
just told you, the Ethereum blockchain is an incredible story. And if you take a look at the dozens of corporations that are
like
now
the
aligning
UN
themselves with the
UN
Ethereum
wants to use
network,
it?
it is a stunning story. Well, it's just a stunning story, dude. That's data that I didn't know 6 months. If I'd have known that data 6 months ago, I would have been a
the
huge
UN
buyer at
wants to use
7.
Ethereum.
But once I
Okay,
realized
great.
the Ethereum network was attracting all these corporations because it has this value to these corporations, because it has intrinsic, tangible value to these corporations,
There's no
then I would have been a
tangible
buyer at 7. I didn't figure that out till it was 20.
Okay. Well, my point is, if you missed out on these Bitcoins and crypto, whatever it is, silver is going to be the next one. And it's the only one that's going to stand the test of time.
All right. Well, look, here's the other thing, and I do want to give you a chance here at the end to talk about your micro miniges, your Silver Shield products, because you make these beautiful coins, and they're not very darn much more in terms of a over spot price than buying a Silver Eagle. So can you tell people about maybe your latest coin, what's coming down the pike, and how people can buy those?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. I mean, I haven't spoken to you in such a long time, but I do my Silver Shield line, and the reason why I did it was because I saw that the price of silver is so manipulated that you're constantly getting messed with. So what I've worked up is this formula of releasing new designs on a weekly basis with a certificate of authenticity, and they're good, meaningful designs. You know, it's not like fuzzy animals or having the resting bitch face of the Queen of England on the back of your maple leaf or whatever, or government propaganda from Goldman Sachs Treasury. With the hundreds of millions of eagles out there, I produce on a weekly basis, 5 to 10,000 of these strikes. And I tell you what, Sean, I sell them for the same price, if not less, than all the government mints. It's a private solution, and they do really well on eBay. I think the average one goes up double in value. So we sell them for $2 to $3 over spot. And on my little chart right now, they're averaging $15 over spot on eBay, and people have been buying one and selling it and then buying two the next week from the profits that they made from that, and they're continuing to stack real silver and have a cash flow that no other silver can provide. And I've been trying to tell people, like, hey, listen, whether you're stacking something for generational wealth, these are all anti-paradigm, anti-debt and death, anti-military industrial complex, anti-medicine industrial complex, pro-cannabis, pro-love, a lot of these messages that are not reaching out to these people who are stuck inside the system. But I tell you what, man, after this paradigm collapses, these kind of strikes, the lesser evil from the 2016 election with Hillary and Trump, I got all sorts of designs out there. I think they're going to be even more desirable because they called out in time with what's going on. And I think future generations are truly going to appreciate the messages and meaning that I've been putting on here. And even if we don't have to wait for future generations, because right now on eBay, they're doing fantastic. So I try to tell people, like, if you like silver, you got to get out of all these other, digital illusions of wealth and into real, tangible, physical, eternal, useful, vital silver. And if you understand the Silver Shield story, you got to get Silver Shield because it just outperforms all other silver that you're going to be able to buy out there for the same price.
Yeah, and you mentioned, and I know people are selling them on eBay, but where can people get them at the $2 to $3 over spot when the micro miniges are available?
So you go to silvershieldexchange.com it's an X, not EX. Exchange.com, and I have a free website you can just go to. The BUs, the brilliant uncirculated, are the ones that sell for $2 to $3 over spot. Join my mailing list. Every week I release a new one. This week I have Nazi Bride, which is, I'm sure, one that you're going to want to pick up, Sean, showing the Nazi roots of Queen Elizabeth, that their family is actually German and not British, Saxe-Coburg-Gotha.
100% true. Prince Philip was a Nazi.
Yes, he was. Queen Elizabeth, when she was a young girl, was giving Nazi salutes. When most girls her age would be doing cheerleading, she was giving Sig Heils. And she actually married a Nazi. Was it Prince Albert or Edward? Or what's his name?
Well, Queen Elizabeth married Prince Philip.
Prince Philip. Prince Philip's three sisters both married high-ranking Nazi officers, and he was in, a funeral over there for them. Rudolf Hess was very tight with the British monarchy, and in the middle of World War II tried to fly over to negotiate a peace with them. And even the younger redheaded Prince Henry or Harry, was caught dressed as a Nazi. Like, there's just Nazi. Oh, and forget about the Bank of England financing the rise of Hitler and all the industrialization. And that's one of the reasons why we had such a bad depression, because all the capital was flowing over to support Nazi Germany's creation. So Nazi Bride, to me, is going to be one of these controversial designs that I think are going to stick out. The proof version I did last year was banned on eBay, which, of course, only drove the price up even more. So now I'm releasing the BU version this week for $2 to $3 over spot, depending on what value or quantity, and it'll never be minted again.
Well, very cool. That's what makes them special, guys, is they're finite. I mean, micro mintages, my God, I've been an advocate for a long time of the kookaburras and all these Perth Mint products that were limited in mintage, and now they're expanding those runs to 500,000 coins. And here you're talking about, what are we talking about in a micro mintage?
Yeah, well,
10,000?
Yeah, 5 to 10,000. I did one with Putin saying winter is here, and it was kind of like a Game of Thrones with him holding a burning dollar. That was our most successful one that we did last week with 11,000 units. But, it goes in between 2 and 10,000. But, talk about really small runs. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I get emails from these dealers going, only 500,000 made globally. I'm like, is that rare? Like,
Yeah. Well, it's more rare than a silver eagle,
yeah.
Which in some cases is 40, 50 million coins a year.
Yeah.
So
and
that's why those are
price.
never worth more than what you paid, and they're only worth the silver spot. So I mean, generally, they're worth what the silver spot is plus $2-3.
Yeah.
And in the case of some of these others, like the kookaburras, when they no longer make that coin, because they made 300,000 of them, that 2010 design is gone. They change the design every year. That's what I like. And then so because you can't get them, you can only get them on eBay, and instead of being $20, they're 30, 38, 40, 50.
That's right.
And so that is what's interesting. And we call those semi-numismatics. I think Chris and I and Brother John came up with that a while back. Semi-numismatics, because they're not numismatic coins, but they are precious as time goes by because they're no longer available in the limited edition, limited run designs. And that's what makes Chris's Silver Shield coins so special. So, Chris, it was great to catch up with you after, too long.
Yeah, well, it was good to talk to you, too. I'm back in the swing of things, and really looking forward to sharing more info with people out there and getting people out of the debt and death paradigm, empowering themselves, and being a positive force in this world.
Yeah, amen. And you'll have to help us document whatever happens in 2018. We've got to keep our eye on that Economist magazine. That's a 30-year prediction, man. It really is.
Yeah, and they said pencil it in for 2018.
It's a stunner, a 30-year prediction. Who could be so bold than to put their whole plan out there for the world 30 years ago?
Yeah, 30-year prediction on the most important event in humanity. It will be the single largest transfer of wealth that humanity will ever see, and for those people who are not, becoming aware and prepared for it, God help you, because the world after that event. I mean, we're talking, these oligarchs having unlimited amount of wealth, actively pushing for eugenic programs, shutting off the growth and need for humanity itself. They will have AI, they will have robotics, they will not need us. We will be truly a two-tiered humanity, with those at the very top owning, ungodly powers of technology, and the rest of us are going to be what? I mean, they don't need our labor anymore. They're saying 50% of the labor in just 20 years is not going to be needed. I mean, trucking alone is probably the biggest employer, in the United States. And I just saw a Mercedes and a Volvo truck autonomously driving all across the country. I mean, this is coming. And if you don't get your wealth out of the system now and put it into something like silver, you're looking at generational serfdom. I mean, you're dooming your family if you don't do something about this.
Yep, and you can heed those warnings or not, guys, but for real news 24/7, you can check out SGT Report for the real deal, and we really do appreciate your support. Thank you, a special thank you to our Patreons. Without you, we'd really be in some trouble thanks to the Google adpocalypse. But guys, thanks so much for your support, and Chris, thanks so much for joining us, brother.
Yeah, absolutely, Sean. Let's not wait another year.
All right. We're going to cut this thing off because the lawnmowers are flying outside. It's getting noisy around here.
All right.
Should have shut the windows. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We very much appreciate you. Thanks for listening, guys. God bless.
With a variety of things that could impair the normal function of what we've come to take for granted.
If the internet goes down, the cryptos are worthless, right?
Well, and so I come and I look and I say, why do I own gold and silver? In worst case scenario, I have the means for taking care of my family for years and years and years and years to come.